Welcome to WeCan, Kirsten Dickerson, founder of Raven and Lily, director of the film Handmade Future. You're advocating for craftsmen and artisans around the world who are disappearing fast alongside cultural heritage and human connection. You advocate for impact-driven e-commerce, building artisan supply chains. Kirsten, thank you for being with me today, and thank you for your story and insights. Talk to us about your work and your really big mission.
Yes, well, thank you, Stephanie. It's really a joy to be able to have this conversation because I know that you love to talk to a lot of people that are making impact and love to support people in the artisan sector. So I have been, I would say, dancing around the artisan sector for a couple of decades. I was the founder and CEO of Raven and Lily for 10 years, and that was about 2008 to 2018. So I just mentioned that because really I was an early adopter of trying to figure out what would it look like to collaborate with artisans, specifically women, to create jobs and create market access and also give design input so that people would shop things made by artisans, specifically maybe artisans that are more on the margins and really struggling to have that kind of market access. We give like design partnerships, that sort of thing. And so I was living in LA at the time, and I had a lot of friends that were designers in LA, and all of us were new at becoming aware of a lot of the struggles and the unethical practices within the fashion industry specifically. And so at that time, this was like 2006, 7, 8, we were wanting to know, is there a better way? And some of them worked for very established brands that were based in LA. And so we were all volunteers that said, well, let's figure it out. And I had been doing a lot of nonprofit work in India and in Eastern Africa specifically. And I saw this trend of nonprofits in those countries, specifically looking at how could they either work with traditional skills women had or train women in design related skills to create jobs because they knew that if they invested in women, those women would in return invest back into their families and communities. And this was an early time when people were really starting to study more about the impact of empowering women and what that would do in developing nations and in struggling communities. And also the idea of fair trade had been established, especially by like 10,000 Villages and a few other traditional companies, but it wasn't really mainstream. And so the idea for us was what would happen if we partner with a lot of these relationships I had around the world through my nonprofit work to support these efforts to train women, but we came alongside them to help give design input and then also create market access. And honestly, we didn't really know what we were doing, but we were basically at the beginning of what is now referred to as ethical fashion. It also, there's circular fashion, lots of things, but that wasn't even a term. So that's what's so interesting. And in 2000, I think it was like around 2008, there was in London an organization that formed called the Ethical Fashion Forum. And now
Yeah.
it has a new name, but it's called, I think, Common Objective now. But back then, that was the first people to say that. So when I would tell people, I think we want to do something with ethical fashion to support these women, I got the blankest looks from everyone because no one understood what I was talking about. And, really, I say it's like slow fashion. So it's the idea of slowing down and thinking about the impact at every stage you have in production with design related to fashion. And I just mentioned that because it was an early stage of figuring out what would that look like. And we grew a company, started as a nonprofit, then it became a B Corp, one of the first B Corps in Texas, and was part of the Fair Trade Federation. And then after 10 years, I resigned because I actually didn't want to be a part of a big company at that time. I was really still pretty nonprofit minded, but I wanted to keep in touch with those relationships. So since then, I've always been sort of leading craft and culture tours. I more officially do that now with Artist Nomad. But in between, I also took on the role of being the president of a global nonprofit that was specifically focused on working alongside incredible women leaders that were indigenous to their countries that were doing great things to help women. So I got to continue a lot of this same trend of partnering with women, specifically women that were wanting to create jobs with micro enterprise and some of them in the artisan sector. So that was kind of my background. And I just mentioned that because over those, these years of doing nonprofit work in the early 2000s to having the fashion company, then starting to lead craft and culture tours, which was also an early adopter of that. I think there's a lot of that now, but there wasn't a lot of that when I first started it. And then working for the nonprofit, I've watched the impact of what's been happening in the global artisan sector and have been surprised that while in one sense there's a movement towards more awareness
Mm.
about the ethics behind what we buy because we had shifted globally, especially in the West, towards such a fast purchase, quick, cheap for everything, whether it
Yeah.
was fast furniture, fast fashion. And we're just used to just getting what we want, not really having to think about anything behind the impact on people or the planet in our consumption. And we had shifted as a culture that really this kind of being a part of this movement was the first conversation for a lot of people to realize this mattered, whether it was food, fashion, what, home, your home, and the conversation started. But I don't know that the awareness has moved fast enough because still the culture globally continues to produce more and more. Um, our demand continues to be that we like things fast and cheap, even though there's more awareness. And so I just started seeing what that was doing and what it specifically was doing in places where I've been in relationship with for decades was traditional skills. This is where there was real traditional things like block
Mm.
printing or
Mm.
certain types of dyeing or weaving hadn't been passed down. It stopped getting passed down. And so while education was super important for children, they were quick to get education and then find ways to leave their communities,
Yeah.
leave their village, to modernize because they saw everything like that in the world. So whole cultures are starting to disappear. And I know that because I lead my craft and culture tours to try to invest in what is so makes the world so beautiful in all these places, whether it's architecture or the culinary or the culture, the history, the design. And that's what we love about travel is the uniqueness of seeing another place. But all of a sudden, even with travel, a lot of the cities I went to, so many of the new restaurants, all the new stores designs all started looking the same. You don't even necessarily
Mm.
know that it was from that country. And so even if it was saying it was artisan made, it didn't necessarily look like anything traditional. And so a lot of these traditional skills were disappearing, which meant that children didn't have a motivation to learn what was part of their family history and culture. And a lot of the last makers that I knew were aging out. They were in their 70s, 80s,
Mm.
and were kind of at the end of really even having the energy or desire to continue. I even saw that in Portugal when I lived there for a few years. And so it's not it's here in the US. I saw it when I lived in the UK. I saw it in Portugal, and then I've seen it also in Africa, India, Mexico, literally everywhere around the world. So there's both things happening, like people wanting to support it, but then it's also not fast enough and it was disappearing. Yet there are some really incredible examples of families as well as organizations, nonprofits, businesses trying to preserve it, trying to continue to uh, love the global crafts, the beauty of it, and find creative ways to keep it going and present it to the world. And I don't really think there was any one solution that was the answer, but lots of different possibilities. And that's what led me over the last year and a half to make a documentary, just to start to document a few of the relationships I had globally where I loved the crafts. They were different types of crafts. I could document the beauty of those crafts and then take people on a journey with me to see what the challenges were the artisans were facing in different communities, and then the inspiring examples of what they were doing about it. I don't really have one answer to, I think there's a global problem. We're all part of the problem, but
Yeah.
there's also a global solution. We can all be part of the solution in different ways. So I'm hoping this documentary, which is my new my new endeavor with the artisan sector, brings people together to really have conversation and take action in whatever way they feel inspired to do so.
Kirsten, I feel what you're doing is unbelievably important, and I have a lot of personal experience because I used to run a social enterprise called Lalibela alongside a charity that was operating in Africa, where we made money for the charity by selling luxury goods made all over Africa. And I ran this for more than 10 years, or co-ran this for more than 10 years, and I'm just out as of sort of last year. But it was unbelievably beautiful to watch this circle that you were talking about earlier, where you are giving you're helping cultural heritage to be preserved, to show them that they matter, that what they do matters, so it gets passed on, and that you love what they do and you sell it in different parts of the world. And that made money not only for us, the charity, but also for them. And they would reinvest 99% of the money that they made back into their families. And the impact was at least five other people. So it was an unbelievable proposition, but it was also unbelievably hard to scale it and
Yeah.
to actually make it really economically so interesting that it would make sense, as in it was
Yeah.
an unbelievable
Be
input
sustainable.
from everyone, but to make it sustainable and economically viable in the long run was really, really difficult. So talk
Mm.
to us about Handmade Future, and how did you put that together? Where did you get the funding from? And what are you hoping to show people with this documentary?
Yes, well, the documentary is kind of funny that it's my debut film, but I'm married to a filmmaker. So
Okay.
he's made a lot of movies. He shot hundreds of music videos and commercials, short films, you name it. He's actually working on a TV pilot right now in Florida while I'm talking to you. So he's the filmmaker of the family. But what happened was that a year and a half ago, I was leading one of my craft and culture tours with Artist Nomad, and we were in Morocco. And it was the end of our tour, and we were with an organization called the ANU, that is a direct trade model. And it was the last night, and everybody on this tour was like, Kirsten, we are so blown away by our experience with the different artisan groups we've met on this tour. We wish other people could know. Like, not
Mm,
everybody can travel, not everybody can afford it. How can more people understand what we're seeing and learning? Because the majority of them, while they want to like appreciate when you say hand loomed or
mhm.
naturally dyed, they really had no personal experience with that. They
Yeah.
weren't crafters. They hadn't, when they traveled before, that wasn't the kind of travel they had been doing. So it was really new to them. And that's why I lead these tours, is to invite people to come see firsthand. And it really was life changing for them. And they changed the way they still are consuming because of the
Yeah.
experience they had.
Yeah.
But they were like, "Do you want to write a book?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "That won't work. You can't see the beauty of crafts through a book, right?" I was like, "No. I mean, maybe there's some beautiful coffee table books, but it's still not quite the same thing." But they were like, "Will you do more tours?" And I was like,
Mm,
"No, because I mean, that's one of the things I do, but I'm limited because a lot of what I do behind the scenes is more design work and advocacy with artists
mm,
and leaders." So I was just me. So I was thinking, goodness, what do I do with this? I couldn't sleep that night.
mm,
And all I could dream about was this idea of documenting what it was. And I thought it was so funny that I kept seeing a documentary in my dreams all night because I'm not the filmmaker. And so I woke up the next morning and just at the breakfast with the group, I said, "What if I did a documentary?" And they literally jumped up, a table full of women, and said, "Yes, that's what you need to do." And I was like, "Okay." And so I said, "You realize how funny that is?" Because I'm married to a filmmaker. They're like, "You can do it, Kirsten." And I was like, "You know what? I can. I've been the art director on film sets. For 29 years, I've been married to my best friend, been on plenty of film sets. So I actually had somewhat of an understanding, and I thought I could probably talk them in to being a producer with me or something. So I went home and I said, "Hey, babe, what if I did a documentary on artisan craft?" And he's so awesome. He didn't skip a beat. He didn't question it. He just said, "That would be awesome, babe." It was like, he's like, "How could I support you?" I was like, "Would you be a co-producer with me?" And he just quickly said yes. And then as we went along, I also convinced him to be the director of photography. And
amazing.
so this became kind of a dual thing, but he never tried to direct. He really
Mm,
allowed this to be my baby because he knew it was born out of my love for artisans and my relationships. And he was just there, really the front end. I did all of the arrangements, all of the kind of vision, the storyboarding, everything. The back end, the technical part of post production was where I'm like, have no idea. And so we did all of that in London. We were living in London during all last year. And he really was helpful on the post part. So I would say I was the producer on the front end and he was the producer on the post end. And then he was teaching film in London. And every time we could have a break, he would join me somewhere in the world. If he had, I would schedule the different things around his break so that as much as possible, we had five cinematographers on it, but he was the main director of photography and he traveled with me. So this has been a really fun journey because it's sort of us bringing our love languages together
Yeah,
to create
beautiful.
something as a
Mm,
couple to offer back to the world. We did it as a nonprofit because we wanted to invite people to see that, like I said, the beauty of craft, to understand the importance of it
mm,
in communities and cultures, and with women, with sustainability, the way it impacts not just individuals, but whole families, communities, and the environment. But also, there's so many different from direct trade to fair trade to working collaborations with designers to wholesale. There's not really a right or wrong, but I initially thought this is about middlemen. So the original title of the documentary was actually Middlemen, but as the documentary went on, this very hopeful story emerged during the editing process. And one of the artisans featured in my interview with her said, "I believe in a handmade future." And when she
mm.
said that, I just got chills and knew this is what this is about, and that should be the title of the film. So that's why we changed the title, and it just sort of everything around it spoke to this idea that there is actually a future for handmade and an importance of it, even more now than ever, even because of the growth of AI.
Yeah.
So that a lot of this is explored in the film. It's a
Mm,
nonprofit film, so there's no need for us to make any money off of it. It's there to serve the global artisan sector and wherever out. The goal is that many people could see it.
yeah.
We premiered in New York at the Justice Film Festival and then are currently working through the next like 9 months doing special event screenings and festivals, and then after that, distribution. And so that's kind of our goal is to get buzz and excitement about it at some key screenings throughout the year, and then have it widely released. But any money that would ever come from it would actually go back into the Artisan Fund with Artist
Mm,
Nomad to provide apprenticeships and more opportunities for artisans. So it's very much the goal is that the artisans featured benefit, and then beyond that, the global artisan community. And then to answer one of your questions, it was funded by people who've traveled with me.
ah,
So it's
beautiful.
very grassroots. And
Mm,
when this idea came, I literally just sat one day and prayed like, how do I begin? And I put together a pitch packet. My husband has shown me the ones he did. And I've done plenty of pitch packets for businesses, but never for a film. So I put together a pitch packet and then just like had five people that were just really strong on my heart to ask, that had traveled with me, that I know those travel experiences impacted their lives. And all five of them were the first people to say yes to
mm.
donating. And
Wow.
then in the end, I would say 90% probably. I should actually figure it out for sure, but I mean, it's like everyone but two people that donated to the film have traveled with me. It's that many people
Mm.
that, and it's because they knew the stories I wanted to tell. They knew the artisans and they knew could make a difference. So it's a
And
super sweet film in that
you
way.
you built a beautiful community around you, inspired people around you. I wonder, Kirsten, I know it's really difficult to pinpoint sort of how we can bring about wider change here. Of course, it's all about uh, raising awareness, this low cost and speed that seems to be our obsession as a society is eradicating too much and costing us too much in terms of human cost.
Yeah.
What are your lessons learned? What can you share here that is, an important things for all of us to know to then decide individually that we should do something about this and consume differently.
I think there was a few like really beautiful things said by other people in the documentary. I am barely in the documentary with intention because I really wanted you can see me in it because I'm directing it. So a few times I'm in it accidentally, but really the voice of people in the documentary captured what I had hoped we could explore and say. I didn't have an agenda. I didn't really know what would happen, but the way I edited the documentary, you're going to hear a lot of these highlights. And one of the key things that is said is that objects have soul. And I think if we take a step back and consider what that statement might mean, that was
Mm.
said by an artisan, social designer and artisan advocate named Ana Paula Fuentes in Mexico. She's pretty amazing, and she talks a lot about that. So does Karen Gibbs, that is in charge of by hand consulting and the Global Artisan Project at Shop Object in New York. So both of them talked about this idea in the documentary that objects have soul. And I think if we realize that ever since humans have existed, first humans, what did they do? They looked at the natural world around them. They saw the earth, and everywhere in the world, they learned to make pottery. They saw the plants, and everywhere in the world, they learned to make natural dyes.
Mm.
They saw fibers, whether it was from wool or grasses or twigs, and learned to weave textiles, weave baskets, everywhere in the world. So, everywhere in the world, humans have looked at the natural world around them since the beginning of time and made things that were both beautiful and useful for their everyday lives.
Mm.
And it reflected often the natural environment around them, as well as their own creativity, as well as what was meaningful to them. So those objects often also had so much beauty added to them because they were made with time and often had woven into them symbolism or patterns or decorations that actually reflected something that they cared about, believed in, said something about their family, their faith. And that's what was incredible. That's how we used to always do things and make things. And they weren't things that would be temporary. We were making things, the human race, that would keep for you and that your family would keep and that you would keep using. So we've just
Yeah.
shifted so far from that, that things are made so far from us and we easily throw them away because we don't think of they don't have any soul to them because the way that they're produced. And so I think if we're willing to slow down enough to consider that we can surround ourselves with things that matter and tell stories and have a positive impact on people and the planet. It is possible. And the reason I'm mentioning this too is because we just relocated from London to Waco, Texas. That's not something people
Wow.
do every day. So my husband's going to be teaching film at Baylor University, and he was teaching film in London, but Baylor is our alma mater, and um, we have family in Texas. And so when he was offered this position, we've been in Europe for almost 5 years, and we
Mm.
realized it's time to come home to be closer to our kids and to closer to his aging parents. And so we said yes. So we just made a huge transition, but we've moved around a lot. And so since COVID, we've been living many different places doing nonprofit work with both film and artisan and women's empowerment. And we've had to let go of a lot of things. But what did
Mm.
we keep with us in all this journey were the things that had soul. So I've kept my textiles, I've kept the art, I've kept the small objects, the things that matter to me, that had stories connected to them, the people I know. And then now that I'm here and we just bought a tiny little home from 1910 here in Waco, and it's like we have to start over. We've been married 29 years, and it's hysterical to all of a sudden have to like fill a small house. It's not a big house, but a small house. And I'm really thinking about it.
Yeah.
Where am I going to buy things? So it's like everything. And so I'm on everything from Facebook Marketplace. I'm going to the Round Top Antique Show and I'm exploring what is fair trade, who are the local makers. And
Mm.
it's just for me choosing to not be in a rush, but to take the time to do a little bit of research. And I have a not a big budget for this because we've been moving a lot and I've been doing mostly nonprofit work the last few years. So we don't have a lot of resources. So I understand when people say it's expensive. Yes, some handmade things today are incredibly expensive because the amount of time that goes into it, and some of it because it's luxe designer, but not everything is. And so I think part of it is kind of just for me going through that right now and seeing how I can create a house that is filled with objects that have soul, from as much as possible, or reuse and recycle things as much as possible, and be as
Yeah.
creative as I can to make it feel like a beautiful home without it costing an arm and a leg.
Mm.
So that's something that we're thinking through. And there's going to be some times that we just have to buy something just because it's just the nature of what we need. But as much as possible, I hope that it has a good story. But I think as I'm going through that, I want to take notes about what I'm learning, just so you know, like as part of the process, and then share that with people so that they know like what I'm learning, and how can you do that. And even if you can't do it for everything, you can always do something. So my husband and I have always tried to live this way, where we're conscientious of what we buy, whether it's food or fashion or things for your home. But we realize not everybody has access, but it's funny to be in a small town like Waco, and like try to think about it, versus a place like London. So I'm kind of on the journey myself, just to be honest. And I could do things a lot quicker if I wasn't thinking about that, but I am thinking about the thoughts behind it. And I think the documentary really helped me see also this overarching theme about beauty,
Yeah.
and how objects have soul, but also we are so affected by beauty. And there's a reason why when
Mm.
people need to decompose, they want to go into nature, because it is living beauty that surrounds us, whether you are listening to the birds, whether you're seeing the seasons change, whether you feel the wind on your face, or something about that experience. And we can bring that beauty into our everyday lives with our everyday objects that tell stories, but also are beautiful. And so I think when something's mass produced or just a trend, and I don't know if you can really say something's beautiful if somebody suffered on the other end, or if it caused harm to the world. And that's a harsh statement, but in a way, it's hard to say something's beautiful if it was at the expense or exploitation of somebody or somewhere. And I know that's hard to think that way, and I don't want ever people to feel shame, but I think knowing that that's a reality, as much as I can empower people to see positive solutions and positive ways to take action, I want to do that. And I hope the documentary motivates people to see some tangible ways that they can say yes to be more thoughtful and intentional about how we consume.
Kirsten, I couldn't agree more with everything you said, and I would almost go as far as to say that our well-being really hinges on the nests that we build around us, right? Because everything that we are with and everything we consume creates a reality that we live in that either regulates our nervous system or dysregulates it. And that is with everything, right? Because we are sort of energetic beings who live with people and in places. So all of that makes a difference. And running my that was also a non-for-profit, but I really see the difference, as in the chair that I sit on is handmade by artisans in Africa, and the vase over there is handmade by artisans. And everything is full of it, and it creates the soul that is something that's beautiful, that transpires out of those objects, that really make me feel well in myself, that support
Yeah.
my well-being. And I'm not saying that everything else destroys your well-being, but I think that those things are important. And I remember doing a home up, and other than reusing and recycling, places like eBay, we can really,
Yeah.
really, we have those incredible marketplaces where we can buy everything secondhand these days. And they're
I haven't been
incredible
on Facebook.
things.
Well, I haven't been on Facebook since 2012, but I got back on this week because of the marketplace.
Mm, exactly.
And I'm like, oh, there's some great finds. So I'm going to use it for
Yeah.
that reason,
Yeah.
because that's also another thing. But it was like really funny for me I'm kind of picky about how much social media I use, but I'm going to use it for that
Mm,
reason. And so far,
definitely.
I'm finding some great things. I just got to go get a truck for the day. But
Yeah.
I think that what you said is true. I actually had the experience recently because we traveled a lot, of walking into a hotel room, and you could feel the difference from another hotel room that we had
Mm,
stayed at because one place, everything in it had been thoughtfully curated.
mm,
There were a lot of objects that had soul, were handcrafted, told stories. And then the next was a corporate mass-produced hotel room that I had to stay in. And you just lose that sense of creativity. I mean, it was clean and everything was fine, but it didn't inspire you,
no,
you know? And I think
exactly.
there is when you walk in a room that's filled with creativity and it's not just trends and it's not mass produced, but a reflection of the person that put it together and think that it was thoughtfully done. You feel it and you feel
Yeah.
inspired and it can even encourage. I've watched people want to just go write or paint or something like that
Mm,
when they come to certain places and traveling with me, how that even evokes that. And I lead these flora and fauna retreats where there's a lot of nature and you're around a lot of creativity and it's all very simple. But being in these like beautiful, simple but well thought out environments,
mm,
everybody slows down
yeah.
and wants to spend more time meditating, more time in prayer, more time journaling, and then are open to being creative and their brain's able to make that shift, to
Mm,
just like enjoy that experience. And so it really matters. I watch it in myself, but I actually have also watched it in other people
in others.
that travel with me, the difference it makes.
And I feel that the times we live in, it couldn't be more important. And
Mm,
it is literally about our well-being and to not continue the cycle of disconnection and
yeah,
loneliness and, yeah, all the other malaises that we sort of seem
yeah,
to
so
be
true.
picking up as a society. So I always think there's four questions one needs to ask oneself. What are you buying? What is it made of? Who made it? And does it align with your values? And if it doesn't, do not spend the penny because it just isn't worth it.
That's so good.
So, what what does success look like for you, Kirsten? I mean, we want everyone to watch the film Handmade Future. If you can watch it online, I'm not sure. You said you're doing festivals. Everyone should watch the film Handmade Future. What does success sort of mean to you?
Well, I think for right now, it's not easy to watch the film because you have to go to one of the events. So we'll be in the by the beginning of April, we'll have our events kind of
Mm,
release that people know. So it'll be in key cities in our country as well as the UK. We have some great partnerships with some great organizations. So hopefully, if you're in one of those cities, I think you need to be following on Artisan Nomad Instagram or Artisan Nomad's emailer to know what we're
perfect.
doing, and we'll have it on the website. And then I think success would be that it does get distributed widely so that anyone can have access to it starting in the fall. I actually would love to see the film released right before or at Thanksgiving as people begin to shop for
Mm,
the holidays, to
mm,
really be something that motivates people when they're going to spend a lot of money
yeah,
that they might invest it in these artisan communities.
yeah.
And so that's kind of for me, success would be that people see the film and then immediately, if they own a store, want to go find more artisan brands that are, following fair trade practices and are ethically producing to support
Mm,
and to bring into their storefront and into their collection. If they're a designer, that they would think about like ways they can collaborate with artisans where it's a partnership.
yeah.
It's not just the artisan being a producer, but they're truly collaborating. They're working on everything together. So there's a real mutual understanding and benefit on both sides. And if it's a consumer, that you are willing to do the work to explore the makers in your community,
Mm,
the makers connected to people that you know in your life that are running maybe nonprofits or organizations that you've heard about, and support those people and go online and shop artisan craft, shop handmade, shop ethically produced, and be willing to not need as much stuff. And if you're going to get something or give something, that either even you yourself take the time to make it, like maybe it'll inspire people to craft themselves and to do more handmade themselves. But I'm hoping that on any of those levels, that could affect anybody watching the film. They would feel a need to respond in one or multiple ways. And that would be success, is that you don't just watch it and think, oh, that was a beautiful film, but you walk away and you continue to think about it, and you don't allow that just to be a one-time thing, but something that sparks in you a desire to be intentional with the way you consume. And so, and a film lives on kind of forever. So
Mm,
I hope that it's a timeless film that can be used, for many years and to encourage people. It's very, humble film as far as like low budget, but big-minded as far as like how much we brought to the party and how many people gave of their time and resources, because it looks like a lot bigger film than it normally would cost, because we had that many people, like you said, community-wise, say, I want to be a part of this. We had even the person that made the poster for it makes some of the biggest films you've ever heard of posters, and he did it pro bono because he
amazing.
just believed, he saw the film and he's like, I love this film. That's actually surprising to me. The men who have seen this film love it. And I wasn't sure if it would be
Mm,
like too slanted because I leave mostly women on my craft and culture tours, but we have men and women in the film and they love it. And so it's like great. It's like not just, it's a gender neutral, I guess. It could be appealing to anyone. And we've had children even came to the premiere and they loved it. And so I think that that's something I'm excited about, is it,
yeah.
yes, I think would excite people already like you and me in this sector, because it affirms a lot of what we've seen or what we believe. And it's something, a tool I hope that people who are already in the artisan sector can use somehow to promote what they're doing and tell other people about it. But I hope that it reaches people who maybe aren't thinking about the importance of handmade and the ethics behind the handmade industry and the beauty behind all of that. And I hope that it inspires them to slow down and to be more intentional, that maybe have not done that before, and to be new lovers of craft and handmade and not think of it as being something outdated or something, not well done or something too expensive. But it really, I think, inspires people to see that no, this is for me too.
Kirsten, and will you tell our audience again how they can find you?
Sure. So, artistandnomad.com is the website, and the Instagram is artist period and period nomad. And so those are the two main things. If you go to our website, you can watch the trailer. You can also see it on our Instagram. And both of those places is where we'll be posting where the screenings are. It'll be in early April that you will hear about the events, and then we'll keep unfolding them up into the fall. And then that's where we will be posting craft and culture tours, which you actually interact with the people in the documentary on my craft and culture tours. And so if you were wanting to have a firsthand experience, I host a few of those throughout the year to places like India, Kenya, Oaxaca, Portugal, and Morocco, and England. And then I have a nonprofit arm that I'm going to grow. And so, part because of the documentary, we're going to lean more into being a nonprofit. And so, I'm always going to be looking for people that want to collaborate. And as more opportunities come and the documentary gets out there, I think there'll be more opportunities to give back and work alongside other people in the artisan sector. And so, I'm want to connect people. And so, I think following the journey, especially if you are a designer of any kind or a photographer or anything like that, there's such a need, or graphic artists, there's such a need around the world for people with those skills to come alongside artists and leaders to give them just the support to be able
Mm,
to have that market access that usually it's Western owned artisan companies that have the global market access. And so what I'm trying to do is like work alongside those that are trying to give the actual leader in those countries that same market access. So one of the women in the documentary just showed her collection for the first time at Shop Object in New York, and it was a great success. And
amazing.
it took 2 years to get there,
Mm,
and a lot of like collaboration on how do you do a line sheet, the photography, the communication with the customer. That's all is smart. She has two MBAs. She's like super brilliant, but that point A to B is not something the global artisan leaders naturally have connections to, and it
mm.
requires somebody saying, I want to help them have that direct access without having to go through someone. So I'll be looking for a lot of people in the future that have those skills, that want to collaborate and help some of these amazing leaders around the world get that access that they deserve so they can continue to grow their businesses and thrive.
Kirsten, I'm so grateful for you, for the work you do, for everything that you said, with what you lead with. I think it's really important. We would love to encourage everyone to look you up, to
Thank,
thoughtfully curate your lives with objects that have a soul, and do the work, do the research, and find the pieces that will literally enrich you.
thank you so much. I really enjoyed our time together. Thank you for all that you're doing to encourage endeavors like I'm doing and other people in this space. It's pretty amazing. So thank you for all you're doing, Stephanie.